Gaunter Odim, Master Mirror, the Man of Glass. He has as many names as he has secrets, one of the most, if not the most, complex character in the entirety of the Witcher world. So complex, in fact, it's hard to get a grip on his story and character at all, but we're going to try regardless. Mind you, considering Master Mirror's elusive nature, I doubt anyone can truly claim to know who or what he is, so this will be a story of speculation, if anything. We'll try to analyze as much as we can, even when we look a little crazy doing it, but look at this as more of a theoretical study on Odim than a story. Now then, let's begin. The one thing that stands out the most about this entity is his name, or his many names I should say. But the first letter of the three parts of his name, Gaunter Odim, spell out God. That's just too easy though, isn't it? Especially as so many fingers point towards the devil instead. Curious, that? Don't worry, his other known names give us another hint, but let's follow this devil lead first. After Geralt strikes a deal with Odim, he asks us to meet him at the crossroads near Gaunter, and there are a few observations we can make here. The most obvious one, of course, is the crossroads situation, because you see, the devil, in many stories, often makes his deals at a crossroads. It's where the souls are sold. However, crossroads are not just the devil's marketplace. It's demons in general, or really any spirits. A crossroads merely represents a location between the worlds. It's a site where supernatural spirits can be contacted and paranormal events may take place. And this is not strictly linked to the devil. The second point of note is the name of the nearby village, Gaunter. Unassuming to most, perhaps, but a yantra is also the name of a mystical diagram from the tantric traditions of the Indian religions. Generally used as a force of good, they were meant to ward off evil, bring luck, or to aid in exorcisms, among other things, of course. So, here we have two powers meeting in the middle, a crossroads, most often associated with evil, and a yantra, often associated with good. However empty such descriptions may be regarding the nature of existence. And Master Mirror sits at the crossroads, pondering why even the most rotten scoundrels still have this inner compunction to repay debts of gratitude. He doesn't seem to understand the notion that someone cruel would still feel gratitude to anyone. And when Geralt tells him he doesn't believe that Odim helped him at all, he seems even more surprised, assuming that it was not gratitude that made Geralt seek him out, but curiosity, a trait he adored due to it leading to so many fascinating tales. Of course, should Geralt choose to diverge from the path and leave to find Olgierd immediately, Odim will still find you, though slightly dismayed this time that you chose not to honor your deal, because you must know that Odim does not appreciate liars and cheats, which is why he himself never lies.
I never cheat.
Whenever he can, he talks around the subject instead, simply ignore the question entirely, or he outright tells you he won't answer the question. And perhaps this is why Gaunter dislikes Olgierd von Everec so deeply, because that man is made of lies and violence. Stuck in a contract with Odim, certainly a terrible fate, but doesn't he quite deserve it? Let's have a closer look at the history of these two. When questioned, Olgierd tells us how his family fell into ruin. Bad investments, a bad crop. Everything happened all at once. When it rains, it pours, as he says. He lost everything in a very short time. Now, we know from experience that Odim likes to gently push a person into dealing with him. We also know that he gravitates towards the unsavory type in regards to soul contracts and curses. The spoon-white, a lady who wouldn't even give a beggar the scraps off her table. The dwarves on the island of mist, thieves and liars. And Olgierd, a violent bandit that rides from town to town with his family, plundering and murdering left, right and center. Quite frankly, Olgierd is probably the very worst of them all. which may be why Odim sought him out for his soul instead of a regular curse. So it wouldn't be entirely out of the realm of possibility that Master Mirror had a hand in the entire family's misfortune, especially considering Vladimir tells us it's a family tradition to raid and plunder. Now, if you're not into far-fetched theories, this is your final warning to turn around and run, because this will be the first of many. No? Alright then. What was it Olgierd said again? My family, they took on some debt. A poor investment in a sawmill, a bad crop one year, a lawsuit lost, you know how it is. When it rains, it pours. And what was it that the man of glass told us when we reached for a particular sword in his mirror realm? What is it about swords that turn men into utter fools when they see one for the taking? Through howling winds, pouring rain, with their life hanging by a thread. Interesting phrasing. I'd wager some of that debt Olgierd is talking about may have come from a sword. His father's sword, mentioned by Olgierd as well, was auctioned off by the Borsodi auction house, but Olgierd never mentions the diagram that forged it, and I believe Horst held on to that particular item. Because the sword we find in Odim's magical mirror playground is the Viper Venomous Silver Sword. That weapon doesn't have an armor set per se, it also doesn't have a crafting diagram, but its steel brother does, in the real world. The Viper Venomous Steel Sword diagram can be found in the Borsodi Vault. Rather strange coincidence, wouldn't you say? Odim never pushes one over the edge by his own hands, but he certainly helps, and that diagram can't have been cheap. Not to mention that Odim is in possession of von Everec blood of an unknown source. Perhaps Bohumil von Everec, Olgierd's father? With his family's fortune spent, Olgierd gets blind drunk, and in a fit of rage curses the Ophiri prince. A curse, he later finds out, which took hold. That same night he also sets out to summon Gaunter Odim, and make a pact with him. Iris, his betrothed, was well aware of this pact, and both likely thought they could trick the man of glass. You see, Olgierd studied the occult feverishly, and must have thought that Odim was just another simple trickster demon, or perhaps a djinn, of which he has so many books. After all, he got the information about Master Mirror from a wandering witch. Not much chance to study the name that way. Together with Iris, they figured out a way to trick him back. 3 wishes would be made. Yes, 3, not 2. Perhaps he meant to only make 2, but as we all know, Odim cares a great deal about the details of conversation, and Olgierd's phrasing, as he tells it us, is easy enough to interpret as an extra wish. Firstly, Olgierd wished to win back Iris's hand. To that end, Odim gave Olgierd's words effect and cursed the prince. The downside here is obvious, of course, though not directly for Olgierd. But given that Odim seems to have some form of future vision, perhaps he knew how he would handle this in the future. Secondly, he wished to have his fortune restored. Master Mirror fulfilled this wish in 2 ways. First, by granting Olgierd a fearsome group of bandits to join him on his raids. We know they're not just nobody ruffians. As Olgierd tells us, ever since I began traveling with them, my old enemies have sat quiet as moles. Note that he doesn't say, I turned immortal and people fled for the hills, so it was hardly his reputation that sent them his way at the time. And then, shortly after, by having Iris's parents pay off his outstanding debts, humiliating Olgierd in the process. His third wish was to live like there was no tomorrow. Odim fulfilled this contract by slowly turning Olgierd's heart to stone. Careful what you wish for, as they say. However, we know the contract had some clauses, of course, devised by Olgierd and Iris. Because, of course, how is one to enjoy the wishes without a little time to do it in? Odim was only allowed to take Olgierd's soul after another 3 wishes were fulfilled by proxy. In this case, Geralt. And they also had to be standing on the moon together, As far as Olgierd and Iris were concerned, this clause would never be fulfilled, and the only thing they truly sacrificed was Vladimir's life to seal the pact. Now, things moved quite quickly after this. For a short while, everything went well. Olgierd gathered riches through his roving practices. The prince was no more, so Iris was free to marry Olgierd, and they would both live forever. Because don't forget, the immortality wish applied to both Olgierd and Iris, leading to her eventually becoming stuck in the dream world, sleeping, and as a wraith in the real world. But it didn't stay right for long, of course. As Olgierd now felt no pain, no fear, no nothing, his love for Iris withered quickly. The raiding and pillaging no longer interested him as it did before. And this eventually led to Olgierd attempting to break the pact with Odim. Unsuccessfully, of course. And in his despair, which he could still somewhat feel at that point, he knocked over his occult candles, setting the manor they lived in on fire. That winter, in a still half-burned-down house, Iris's father attempts to annul the marriage, and Olgierd, now nearly fully emotionless, kills him in a rage. It seems at this point rage is all he has left. Until a short time after this event, during the same cold winter, Olgierd decides to leave the manor and Iris behind, in the capable hands of the caretaker and two familiars from another realm to keep Iris company, in the form of a cat and dog. It seems that Olgierd hasn't quite lost his occult summoning tricks just yet. The von Everec estate, already burned and now ravaged by the harsh winter, falls into ruins very quickly. In the meantime, Odim had started taking an interest in a certain famous witcher, Geralt of Rivia. On his quest to find Yennefer of Vengerberg, Geralt finds Master Mirror sitting at a table in the White Orchard Inn. Unassuming as he might look, he immediately stands out from the crowd, a well-spoken vagrant who offers Geralt something to drink and knows who Geralt is looking for by a quick description. He sets our witcher on the right path towards Yennefer and disappears without a trace, of course. It takes a whole adventure for Geralt to run into the Man of Glass again, and in the meantime, Iris von Everec had already died of loneliness years ago. Olgierd's become an immortal menace, and Gaunter feels it's high time to collect a debt after all these years. Olgierd, of course, refuses and points towards the clause in the contract. But Odim wouldn't be who he is if this wasn't something he already expected. Olgierd and Iris thought they were being clever in adding this seemingly impossible-to-fulfill clause. But Master Mirror has had centuries to hone his trickery, and he delights in games more than anything. The more difficult, the better, as he tells us himself when we talk about simple solutions.
Oh my, far too simple. I dislike simple solutions. Do you like them?
Gaunter doesn't rightly seem to care about the souls he collects so much. He's far more interested in the adventure. He's interested in the human mind, what makes them tick, and why. And you might think, but he's all-knowing, isn't he? Well, yes and no. Though it is only a theory, there are a few hints to what he does and does not know, and the possible reasons throughout our rare conversations with him. The first is this one.
I was subjected to mutations, stripped me of all kinds of human compunctions.
Interesting bit of information. We shall have to discuss it at length later.
Gaunter doesn't lie. We know this already. He plays with words, certainly. He ignores questions. He blatantly tells us he won't answer them, but he doesn't lie. So how could it be that this relatively common knowledge fact eluded our Man of Glass? Even Olgierd mentions the lack of emotions in Witchers. Most people in the Witcher world have heard of it here or there. However, Gaunter is not of this world. In fact, I don't believe he counts any one world as his own. You may have heard of a man named Randall Flagg before. He plays a rather large role in several Stephen King books. Randall doesn't have but one name, however, and one of his other names is Walter Odim. Another character in King's books, called Leland Gaunt, makes fishy deals in exchange for a person's soul, and he loves his pranks. Now, that Gaunter Odim was influenced by these two characters has already been confirmed. But what does that really mean? Leland Gaunt's influence seems quite straightforward. But Walter Odim, Randall Flagg, also shows quite a lot of the same traits as Nyarlathotep, such as his 1,000 different forms, delighting in manipulation and clever deceptions. Driving people mad is more interesting to him than outright death and destruction. But also, pronouncing the name of an outer god, like Nyarlathotep, in true eldritch tongue, is said to drive one mad. What did Gaunter say again when we ask him what he was?
You're not human, that's clear. So what are you? A demon? A djinn?
Do you really wish to know?
Yes.
No, Geralt. You don't. This one time I shall spare you and not grant your wish. All who have learned my true name are now either dead or have met an even worse fate. Yet I still need you.
Of course, we can't say that Gaunter Odim is Nyarlathotep, but to say he's showing some very strong signs is putting it lightly. But more to the point, Randall Flagg can travel between dimensions. It's not outside the realm of possibilities that Odim can as well. After all, we know dimension hopping exists in the Witcher world, through at least the Elder Blood and unicorns. Gaunter likely wouldn't spend enough time on Earth to gather all the general knowledge that most people have. The people of this world know about Witcher mutations, but Gaunter doesn't exist in this world alone. He inhabits many. All Odim ever learns is through the deals he strikes between humans, elves, dwarves, and other creatures. But how does he seem to know so much about so many, you might wonder? Well, he has been around for some time, of course, but he also tells us this.
Wait, you can see me? That is, me, Vladimir von Everec?
Of course. Why ever wouldn't I?
Because I'm in Geralt's body, the Witcher's, and...
Just who would I be if the true nature of things remained hidden from me? Someone like you, meaning no one.
While he might not have all the details right away, Odim's words are often to be taken very, very literally. In this case, we might surmise that Gaunter can see the evil in one's heart. He's attracted to it even. Then he seeks them out, observes them for a while, and proposes a deal of some sort. Evil is easier to persuade. Another hint to him not being entirely omnipotent is Ciri's quest. When Geralt eventually asks Odim for help in finding Ciri, he tells us...
Tell me where to find Ciri, my...
adopted daughter. I know. Sadly, I can't be of service.
Why not?
There are certain things even I cannot meddle with. Ciri is hidden from my gaze. She's beyond my reach.
However, he does tell us what to do when the time comes to ensure she will return after the White Frost was dealt with. Of course, the most obvious thing to note here is that he cannot see where Ciri is. She is, of course, on the Isle of Mist, hidden away by magic. Nyarlathotep, while an outer god, was also thwarted by Nodens often, an elder god. In the case of the Isle of Mist, that might be linked back to Manannán mac Lir, a member of the Tuatha De Danann. He was known as a trickster too, and possessed the power to envelop himself and others in a mist, so that they could not be seen by their enemies. It's not entirely impossible for Odim to have enemies equal in power to his, and that they too left their mark in this realm. The second thing to note is that while he can see parts of the future, he can't tell you exactly how it will turn out in the end. Geralt might follow his advice, but he might not. Much like the Ents of Aerin, they see possible routes, but they can't tell which one will occur. And thirdly, of course, the fact that he can be beaten at his riddle twice now tells us he's not infallible, just an extremely powerful entity. Alright, so let's recap this quickly. Gaunter Odim is powerful but not omnipotent. He can see different branches of the future but not tell you the definite one. He can travel between different worlds, see the true nature of men, good and evil. He delights in difficult games and devious tricks. He fulfills wishes to the letter, may or may not have equally powerful enemies, and he never ever lies. That's quite a lot to take in already, so let's continue with Geralt's next meeting with Odim before we go any further. Geralt, always looking for witcher work as he does, comes across a notice posted by Olgierd to kill a monster in the sewers. After a rather strange meeting between Geralt and Olgierd, our witcher sets off to complete the contract. However, once he defeated the beast, it turns out that the monster, a giant toad, was in fact an Ophiri prince. And quite literally moments after slaying the beast, an Ophiri search party shows up looking for their murdered prince. Geralt is taken captive and stuffed on a boat set for Ophir. Bad luck, you might say, but it isn't, of course. Not when Odim is involved. We know for a fact that the entire start of the Olgierd saga happened years ago. The surviving thief at the von Everec estate confirms this for us. Manor's been empty all these years, he states. So why in the seven hells did the Ophiri not come to look for their prince until now? It's been at least 2 years. And not just until now, but quite literally at the exact moment that Geralt decides to put him to the sword. No, it's far more likely that Odim waited until now to nudge the Ophiri in the right direction. Gaunter knew about the toad, after all. We theorize that he was the one to give Olgierd's words power. But who else would know that the giant toad in the sewers was actually an Ophiri prince? No one. No one save Olgierd and Odim. Olgierd has absolutely no reason to inform the Ophiri about their toad prince, but Odim does, because he needs Geralt. Now, Geralt is stuck on an Ophiri ship on his way to a rather gruesome execution, giving Odim a chance to help him once more, thus striking a deal. But not only that, it gives Odim leverage regarding Olgierd too. At this point, Olgierd deceived Geralt, and Odim helped him. Geralt has far more reason to aid the Man of Glass now. But let's go back to this boat meeting before we continue. Odim shows himself after Geralt says out loud, "Sleep's not what I need. Someone I could actually communicate with. That's what I want." And Gaunter immediately reminds him that he's helped Geralt before in finding Yennefer. As far as he's concerned, Geralt is already in his debt. He's only here to close the deal. His literal wording in asking if Geralt needs his help is, "Because you do wish to disembark, do you not?" Remember, phrasing is everything in the world of demons, especially one like Gaunter. This time, however, Gaunter decides to make this deal a formal one. He asks again whether the Witcher wants his help, and Geralt confirms it. Odim smiles. It's a deal. Geralt is marked, Odim breaks the spoon he is holding, and a storm soon shipwrecks the Ophiri, allowing Geralt to escape. The spoon breaking seems to indicate the use of his powers. The lady he cursed into a white for not allowing him even the scraps off her table also noted that Gaunter broke a spoon when he cursed her. Spoons in general seem to be a theme around Odim. When he freezes time in the Alchemy Inn, he kills a man by shoving a spoon through his eye socket. You might have heard of the saying, "He who sups with the devil should have a long spoon," warning one to be cautious when dealing with a dangerous person. And I do believe Odim would fall under that category. And Geralt is now supping with a scarily short spoon indeed.